eventually married Bonnie.
Yeah.
How long after you got out of the service was that?
Just a couple of months because I actually was reassigned to Lansing, Michigan, and then we had set a marriage date shortly after I was out of the hospital. So it happened rather quickly, but we had planned for it that way and wanted to do the marriage quickly.
So she could live with you.
So she could help take care of me. And
right. And then you had two kids. Jennifer was one of them.
And Chris, our oldest son, the first one was Chris.
Yep. So you had Jennifer and Chris. And what's Jennifer doing now? She's
works for the National Park Service. She had began with that years ago, and she's doing a career with the National Park Service.
And she kind of followed in your footsteps then, as far as
in government service, yes.
Yeah. Yep. And Chris did as well.
He did. He actually had a biology degree at college at the University of Michigan, and then joined the National Park Service law enforcement, and became a law enforcement park ranger.
And from everything I read about Chris, he was a runner.
He was.
He was
good at track, and
yep. I see the high school's got a lot of stuff about him, so he must have been awful good at track.
Yep, he was.
Yeah, even our local library or museum has things on him. So, and so he was a park ranger. Where did he go to? Where was he a park ranger at?
Over several things. He spent quite a bit of time in Utah at Canyonlands and Arches National Park. Then transferred. He went to some training at what we call FLETC, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center at Glencoe, Georgia, where he graduated top of his class, and then went to Oregon Pipe Cactus National Park in Arizona, right down on the Arizona-Mexico border.
And later on in Chris's career, eventually he lost his life, and unfortunately there. What had happened during that time what caused him to lose his life as a park ranger?
His park had 33 miles of border with Mexico within the park. And there was a huge amount of smuggling of marijuana and dope and people through the park. So he was kind of backdoored into it, that you're supposed to be concerned with just the nature of things rather than people smuggling. But he took on a much greater role because of that smuggling operation down there, and he was eventually ambushed by dope smugglers and into a gunfight and took a round that killed him.
And we're gonna post a link to his website so people can read more about that. He was a great guy, from everything we heard about him, and matter of fact, where we're at right now, this is a house that he was going to be living in shortly before that, or shortly after that happened. There was a huge funeral for him here.
Yes.
Yeah, that was just enormous.
It was. Yes, he had developed friendship from college and high school and all through the law enforcement ranks and time. So a huge number of people came into town just for the funeral, and so it was very, very positive honor that they gave him to travel a great distance to attend the funeral.
And how was it with your family going through all of that? Was it a pretty trying time? Or?
It was harder than combat. You just don't know how close that you get to people, and then to have them extinguish like that, it's hard to adjust, and it was even harder for Bonnie, for his mother, than it was for me. I think that because of the natal attachment, and so it was very, very tough to process that and live with it.
And how old was Jennifer at this time?
I think she was on 22 or 23, and she tolerated, or she adjusted probably better than I did.
Right. I don't know if there is really any adjusting to it. It's just something that you have to live with, which
Right.
is, you live through so much. You went through Vietnam, you almost died there, and then come home, and then that happens. It's would be an awful tough road that I couldn't imagine going through.
The good Lord got me through. A lot of it was just believing that there's a lot of religious connections that helped us through and helped me, that explains the depth of human feelings.
Now, with all this stuff happening, all the things you lived through, your service, Chris, what's your feelings on, without getting too political, but what's your feelings on today's politics and the idea of the borders being open as they are, and
It's just crazy. It's just like we have fundamentally lost our soul. That the culture has changed so much that I don't know. There's no element of logic or legal precedent to just throw open the borders and more or less invite illegals to come into the country. It's just absolutely crazy. And particularly at a time when we're in economic turmoil and you got inflation and things, plus we'd had a lot of unemployment to bring in, and of recent in 2020 we had the COVID scare, so now we're bringing in thousands of illegals without a COVID test and trying to speak out of both sides of our mouth that we're controlling COVID, and the politicians seem to have a way of avoiding truth and reality in favor of some kind of a harebrained idea that this is supposed to work.
right. You work with the Border Patrol from time to time, don't you, as well?
I did, yes. In Chris's honor, I got back into service, and with my combat experience and knowing that the border in his park down there was a low intensity combat zone, because this is not the first shooting that had happened down there or the first casualty. There were others that were killed. And so I was able to find a way I could help, and in Chris's honor, I helped train some of the Park Service law enforcement, and we worked with the Border Patrol to help them where we could with the Park Service law enforcement. So it was some payback, if you will, to be able to help establish that and help that grow.
Neat. And have you talked to any of these Border Patrol agents and stuff what's their, I'm curious, I wonder what their opinions are on what's going on right now,
They're very opposed to what's going on. They'd like to be able to do their job and cut off all of this smuggling. So there's a morale problem within the Border Patrol, that they have been muzzled and overwhelmed with all of this open border stuff. And the ones that I know are very disturbed that it could happen this way, very upset.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, the public, are just as upset and disturbed as well.
This is not the American way to do things.
No, I 100% agree with you there.
Fundamentally, we're giving away the value of the American citizenship by handing it out like candy as these politicians. And liberals want to do, particularly where a lot of it is based on a Marxist theology that want to destroy capitalism and our American way of life. They want to throw over everything that's American and United States, thinking that it was settled down without regard to history, that it didn't work in World War II, it didn't work at later times, it didn't work in Korea, and no place is there an example of communism having worked in a positive fashion for people. It's always a disaster.
Right, and it's something that you fought. You fought for democracy and capitalism, and you almost gave your life for it, and and really, as far as I'm concerned, Chris did give his life for it.
He did too. He gave his life for that ideal, and for people to talk down the United States and our way of life for nothing more than a fantasy is stupid. Is the only thing I reinvented the concept of stupidity.
And I think a lot of these people think that all these people coming over the border, that none of them are dangerous. They got that in their head. And I think some of them are very dangerous, obviously.
They are. And after Chris, we found there's an association of people I've met. After 9/11, in the World Trade Center, there was a family group of survivors of 9/11 that lost family in the towers there during 9/11. And so I've met people that have lost, and also there's another association more recently of families that have lost other family members to illegals by means of crime or car accidents or something like that, where their family would have survived had there not been an illegal in that position to take a life.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of families that we know that have had that happen.
But politicians don't like to talk about them.
They don't like it, and neither do the media. CBS and NBC and all these liberal stations don't want to look at that.
Right. And even at that, a lot of these people coming over the border illegally are disappearing as well. And we think we're helping them out so much, but a lot of times they get stuck with the wrong people trying to get here.
That's right. There's cartel gangs and groups that are just totally criminal that get these people to enlist with them, and they go to crime and drug smuggling.
Awful. Just awful. Well, it looks like we're going to run out of recording space here, so we're going to have to come back and do yet another part 2.
Pick up a couple other chapters later.
Yep. Bob comes over at least a few times a week for coffee, and we try to save the world by discussing how it could be saved. But
the speaker is not taking notes, so he covers some of the same things again.
Well, I just want to share your story with everybody on here. So
I've enjoyed it, so thanks for the questions, and God bless America.